Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Brianne Gordon Parnell on the podcast. See, I thought that might be the one time that I get tongue-tied and twisted, but I didn't, everyone. Okay, we got through it. Okay, so the first step is always the hardest, but she's a strong woman coming to us all the way from Missouri. And if I didn't say strong woman, people probably would have been able to guess it because unfortunately, with the type of guests that I have on, it's kind of hard to hide. What they do, but she's on here to share her health and fitness journey and discuss all things health and fitness like we always do. And most importantly, she's our current guest, Brianne. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, no problem.
Well, I asked this first off because, it's a good question to get out of the way. What is the weather like today in Missouri?
It was actually really nice today. It was like in the 60s and
Yeah,
sunny.
we reached a high of about 40 here, which that's streaking weather basically in November in Minnesota. So, it wasn't too bad. But then again, for Thanksgiving, we're looking at like, a high of like 15 or whatever like that. If that isn't saying
Oh my
Thanksgiving,
gosh.
oh my God, don't even get me started. I mean,
I think we're gonna be in our 40s.
at least it wasn't last year because last year, like, we got snow like October 18th. We got like 6 inches of snow, but it melted like the week after that. But yeah, don't. Okay, so we're not gonna get started talking about our winter woes because we're gonna depress all the people from the South basically on, and we're gonna lose about half the viewers within like the first minute, which is normally what happens. But why don't you just to get things started, really go through your journey and what inspired and motivated you to get in shape and how that led to eventually where you're at right now.
Okay. Well, about 8 years ago, I was probably 115 pounds, just a runner, hadn't lifted a weight at all, and actually had no idea how to lift weights. And so I was scrolling on Facebook, or I think it was Facebook at the time, just Facebook, and was kind of just like not happy with where I was. I was happy with my numbers on my running, but wasn't happy with what I was looking like. And I was about to turn 25, and I was like, I really need to change something up. So actually, Dana Lynn Bailey came across on my Facebook as like something to follow or whatever. And I was like, holy cow, I want to look like her. So that's basically what started off my journey into lifting, even anything. And I started with a trainer and started lifting bodybuilding style, and kind of got intrigued by lifting heavier and heavier. And then finally, about 2 years ago, I met my coach at that time, and he said, "I'll program you and do your nutrition." And I was like, "Okay." And he said, "Let's prep you for powerlifting." And I was like, "All right." Never done it before. Actually, never competed in anything before. I was kind of a chunky, strong-ish, uh, like bodybuilder girl. I like to eat. I struggled from going from 115 up to 150, and then when I finally hit 150, it finally bumped me up to where I was starting to gain some weight and some size. And so then when I started in with this program, he actually helped me get my macros straightened out and worked on what actual good foods I needed to be eating. And then that honestly is when numbers started just really working for me. So my body looked better, my lifts were better. And then about, I don't know, 8 months into it, um, my CNS and everything got fried, and I was kind of bored with doing the three lifts, honestly. And I was like, this just doesn't seem like it is for a thing for me. And so I went into strongman or strongwoman and been competing in that ever since. And I think I'm going to do some powerlifting actually this next year, along with some higher, hopefully, comps in strongwoman.
The one thing that I thought is so interesting about you is like looking at your photos, like you're the one strong woman or strongman competitor that looks like they could compete in a bodybuilding show in like 2 months if you gave it to them, because most of them don't really have that defined when it comes. I mean, they're huge and they're like in great shape, but they're not as defined as you. Did you ever think about doing like a bodybuilding show? Because out of all of the strong women that I've had on and the powerlifters had on, you're probably the one that would probably have the easiest journey to transition.
I've actually been asked that a couple times, but for me, it's actually going to be really hard because of my job that I have full time. It depends on like with water and the food, and like you can't eat just certain foods. You have to lower your carbs and this and that. Well, if we end up with a rough day or a rough night, there's a possibility that I could just blow an entire diet out of, and then I would be done with a show. I wouldn't be able to make that show. So between that and then I don't know, I'm really enjoying doing strong stuff. And the reason why I did this the way I'm doing it, staying so lean, is because of that stereotypical female and strong woman is supposed to be chunkier. Nothing wrong with it. It actually helps out to have a little bit of that fat storage in you, for doing those reps and those extenuous type lifts and stuff. But for me, I don't know. I was like, let's show them what we can do by looking a certain way too. And so that's kind of why I do what I do. I make sure I set my macros down. I do a cheat day like everybody. I like to eat food.
Well, and I forgot to add in the intro, she is a firefighter as well, so that's what she meant by her job. And yeah, that's going to be a hard job to go through a prep with, especially a bodybuilding prep. I mean, it's going to be almost impossible. But I mean, like I told you before we started recording this, I saw some of your photos from your Instagram page of when before you started this journey as to where you are now. I mean, you have made such a drastic change. What has that mental change been like too as well? Because people talk about the physical change so much because it's the change that they can see, but that mental change is 1,000 times more important. And what was that like for you just mentally going through this big transformation?
Well, I'll tell you, it wasn't always easy actually. Trying to think of when the transition changed. It used to be that when girls had muscle, it was like, oh, you look like a guy, from both men and female. And then it's changed more recently to, it's like, oh my gosh, that is like the gorgeous best thing I've ever seen is female with muscle. You still got your here and there haters, but for the most part, everybody's like loving it now. And it's kind of hard to take because you're like, okay, you were just upset and hated me for looking like a man, and now we're glorifying it. Like, I don't know, it's crazy. Um, it does. It takes a little bit into, because you're constantly. Um, I'm trying to think of what's the word. Body dysmorphia. You're constantly dealing with it. You're either too small, or you look too big, or you're too fat, or you're not big enough. It's just, it all messes with your head. And if you don't have a strong enough mental capability of working through all of that, then you're gonna constantly fall short. And so it was quite a bit, kind of rough, to kind of go through some of those. But I just stuck it out and said, I don't care. I'm not doing this for anybody else, really. I'm doing this for me and what I like to see. And what I like to see is what I became. So that's.
Well, here's how we solve the body dysmorphia. If you're ever suffering from it, just send me a message on Instagram saying, "Am I big enough?" And I'll say, "Well, first off, you're an idiot. Of course you are. Yeah. What are you talking about?" But I totally understand as well. I had times where I was going up to friends and be like, "Hey, do I look good?" and stuff like that. And they're like, "Dude, we can see your six pack through your shirt and stuff like that." It's like, come on, dude. So that was back in my really in shape days. And I say, yeah, I totally understand. And I mean, to people that aren't into the lifestyle, it sort of seems like just super ironic that like the better you look, the more insecure you might get about it. It's like, yeah, that tends to go, with a lot of things. But I love to talk genetics on this podcast because everyone's on social media and oh my god, I want his arms, I want her abs, I want their back. I just want to strangle them and just be like, you do not understand that, people's genetics and the fact that if you're to work out just like them, you're not going to get those results. But on top of that, whenever someone first gets started working out, they always have that one body part that really, really takes off that they don't have to train as much. And they have that one body part that just drags behind that they have to train to oblivion to get to catch up. My back was the one thing that took off for me, but I'm also 6'3", so my legs and my lower body are just absolutely shot where I need to inject pure muscle into my legs, and still they won't grow. I mean, it's gotten to a point where everything I've tried really everything, but what was one body part for you that really took off, and then one body part that has sort of leg behind?
Let's see, my calves. My like just like anybody. I mean, pretty much 99% of people, it's like their calves are their problems, their problem muscle. That I cannot. I've tried everything, and I cannot get my calves to
Thank
work.
God, because that is my number one. I wasn't even going to bring it up because I get too upset talking about it. So I was like, okay, there's another one. Thank God.
Yeah, oh yeah, but my traps. I don't even train traps, and they just. I don't know. Like, I had a coach that he was
Here, hang on. Put
putting.
put your hair back for a second so we can really see the real. Okay, that is just good God.
They're quite big. They don't look that big, but they are quite big. And I actually told one of my coaches, I was like, I don't know why we're having shrugs in my programming because I really don't need them to get bigger.
Okay, and we just heard her say they're not that big, but they look. Come on, no. It's. I even commented on our photo post before. I was like, okay, yeah. I don't even know if we're gonna have a camera screen big enough to fit your shoulders and your traps in because, good God, and that's the one thing that's really gotten me angry about traps, though, too, is that's just like calves, where it's like you're either born with a nice genetic set for. Because, like you said, you don't train traps. It's that's
No.
they're the calves of the upper body, basically, is what I've come to call them for. So, hey, at least you were blessed with one of them. For me, yeah, other than the back and stuff. But yeah, the traps for me has been the one thing that's my favorite body part, to just look at a person, just like see, because that's the one where you're just, I don't know, it's weird, but it also has the negative effect where it makes your neck look a lot smaller than it actually is too. So it's just,
Or
but like
sometimes it makes it look bigger than it
that
normally is,
that
depending on
too.
what you're wearing.
Yeah, that too. That's another thing. Well, I was gonna say that, save it for later on, but clothing options. That's got to be something that's got to be a little bit more restrictive for, especially being a female. I mean, being a male with muscles enough is hard enough as it is, but being a female, how have you been able to sort of cope with the fact that, I mean, you're going to need to have, a lot of patience, first of all, trying on stuff, and you're going to need to have basically an extended wardrobe.
Oh gosh, yeah. I have clothes from if I lose weight, and I have clothes for when I gain weight. And I'm sure there's a lot of girls like that do bodybuilding that have that as well because you got your bulking season. But I've actually haven't done bulking season in almost 2 years, so I've kind of just hold on to it for the day that I decide to get a little bit more weight on me. But I would say it is really, really difficult. They do not make female clothes for girls who do this stuff at all. My back spread is a 42, and I'm not sure how big that is compared to some, but that's hard. That's hard to stick lats into a girl's sizes. So I normally have to go with a bigger size, which ends up making it a box. And I have to like tuck in one side, like my t-shirts. I'm normally a men's size medium in t-shirts, and I have to tuck in the bottom part of it into my pants because it's either that or it just sits there and flows.
Yeah, don't invite her at any weddings. Then I guess is the number one thing that she's saying.
Oh,
Then, or don't make her like a don't make her anything where she has, because yeah, I've had guests on that did preps during their weddings, and I was like, you're an idiot. First of all, why are you doing this? But again, that just adds even more. That to me makes it even more impressive, is that all the extra stuff that gets added on to this, because when people, like, if I were to mention that, like, oh yeah, I'm talking to a strong woman tonight, most people would be like, oh, those are people that just work out a lot, and then they do like those competitions where they lift a lot, and it's like, you got about 1% of the lifestyle down. You got some of the basics, but there's so many extra added things that just people do not understand unless you're involved in the lifestyle. But we talked about this before we started, and again, it's my number one myth that I love to bust. It's gotten better the last 5 years, but there are still so many women that have that fear that, just even looking at a dumbbell, they're going to magically become super huge overnight. Did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't, I mean, I bet you still hear that all the time to this day. How do you like to respond to it?
oh yeah, I hear it all the time because there's girls that they're like, "But I really like this, but I don't want to be as big as you." And I'm like, "That's fine. This is something I wanted. I actually wanted to be this big."
Oh, and then you tell them you'll be my trainer if that happens.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but it's then I get the well, I put it on size really fast, and I'm like, I mean, that's amazing if you do, but I've never seen anybody put on this much size in overnight. I haven't. I've been around a little bit around the, the block, and I'm like, I've not seen any female be able to put the certain amount of size on very quickly. Yeah, you can put in all the weight lifting you want, but unless you're actually eating and doing what you need to gain the size that you're not going to get big. I mean, that just doesn't work that way. Um, and I worked for like a year at even trying to bust, like I said, 150. I started off actually at 120, 125, and it took me forever to bust 150. And I thought, I was like, I'm never going to do this. This is never going to work. I mean, I was eating more than a grown man was just to be able to get like I knew the weight had to be put on to be able to get the size I needed, and it just wasn't there. But I mean, the right supplements and the right food, that's you're not going to just grow just by picking up a dumbbell. Just not. You're going to get toned. I mean, I have trained females and none of them got huge. They didn't want to get huge, and I didn't want them to either because that wasn't their goal. So I trained them just like I trained, but I'll tell you what, they just leaned up and had sculpted shoulders and abs and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, and I mean, this podcast serves for two purposes. For one, it's helping share people's journeys and stories. The second is for me, where I am slowly trying to find the great white buffalo of that person who literally can just look at the weight and then put on 50 pounds. And my search continues. Like we didn't find her this time, but we'll try someone else and see if that works. But yeah, once I find that person, yeah, I'm just stopping the podcast and just being like, okay, I found it's like I'm trying to find my golden ticket. I haven't found it yet though, but no, that's and I'm probably never gonna find it. But hey, it's a journey, and we'll see if we get there. But yeah, and I love that you said that too, because yeah, so many people, and plus once they first get started, I mean they realize that yeah, this is just it's just so not true. But I mean, you brought it up a little bit, but I want to touch base on it more. I mean, like yeah, you're not the average looking woman, and walking in public, even wearing what I'm wearing on it, you can still see an outline of someone that's in really good shape. What is that like for you, sort of getting used to the fact that, I mean, you drop more people's attention? And like you said before, it might have been a little bit more negative, but now it seems to be a little more positive. What is it like still, though, to just sort of deal with that? Because, I mean, it must make things, I mean, for some people, it becomes a little bit more uncomfortable, but for other people, they get used to it. What has that whole journey been like for you, just sort of realizing that, like, you draw more people's attention than you would have, 5 years ago?
Oh, that's actually one that I was just talking to somebody about this earlier today because that is something that is coming up a lot more for me. Well, like you said, like 5 years ago, I mean, it definitely wasn't a thing. People hated on it, or you got the judgy looks from all the females that just kind of look at you like, oh god, you look muscular. They didn't
Now
like
you got
it.
guys who are like 6 shoulders.
Yeah, yeah, or like a look your traps or something. But now there is so much out there for like people. Just I don't get it, honestly. I've been trying to kind of figure it out the past year. The following that I have gotten in the past year, and the amount of people that when I walk through somewhere, it gets kind of overwhelming. I mean, I went to a comp that was just kind of a fun comp a few weeks ago, probably not a few weeks ago, probably about 3 weeks ago. And the amount of just people coming to me and talking to me and just wanted to know like things and like how it, it was almost overwhelming because I'm like sitting there trying to compete. And then I have people want to talk to me and like get my information so they can follow me on Instagram or whatever. And that's great. I absolutely love that. And I want to give out tips, snippets, what I have learned. I don't know everything. Obviously, I've only been doing that for 2 years, so I don't know everything. I don't even try to act like I know everything, but I definitely want to help somebody that I where I didn't get help in the beginning. And I can honestly tell you, I mean, you post one picture and you've got hundreds and thousands of people, not hundreds of thousands, but hundreds to thousands of people just like commenting or messaging you, and it can get overwhelming. It can be like, how do I handle this? Am I handling it correctly or am I not? I appreciate it, but it is kind of hard to.
Oh, there have been times where I've just wanted to stop doing Facebook or even podcast. I'm just like, yeah, it's gotten to, even for me, and I don't even have that. It's like 8,000 subscribers. It's not that huge of a following, but it's just like it's gotten to a point, yeah, where it's just like, wow, this is yeah. So I can't imagine for some of the people like in the upper tiers of things, just like I would need to like hire someone just to scroll through for me and just make sure. But yeah, it is just, yeah, it is just so fascinating, and it's interesting. Like that you said that like it has changed so much over the years. So yeah, I have had talked to people who have been in the health and fitness industry for decades, and they're like, it's just so weird now, just getting some of the maybe opposite comments that I have. But hey, at least it's for the better now. But I do gotta ask, because it's a big elephant. So I'm a tattoo fan. I've never gotten any myself, but what do your tattoos mean? Especially the one on your shoulder.
This one,
Yeah.
this is my Scottish
Okay.
arm. So all this is like thistles, which is the Scottish flower. I've got a love knot on there. This is for family, and then my son. And I've got, because my Gordon is my maiden name, and then I have that, and Fetch and Bide is also Scottish. It's steadfast is what all that means. So stand and fight and steadfast. And on this side is my nautical side. I got a shark eating a crab.
Do you do the thing like when you flex it, like it doesn't?
It legitimately eats the crab.
Oh, okay, that's awesome. I
That's
had
pretty
I haven't had one person who's actually done that with a tattoo before, so that's awesome that I finally got someone that like actually makes it so it does something. Because like I've had people that have it like literally on their bicep and it doesn't do anything. It's like you missed a golden opportunity right there to do
right?
something at least with it. But at least you
It
tried.
was just actually it kind of just worked out that way because I wanted him there, and then I had this crabby put there, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, would you look at that? He kinda eats him."
Well, who knows? If you get any bigger, it might not work then. So that's the thing. That's the thing though with these tattoos though. So you never know. But yeah, that's great. I mean, I would never. I mean, I've never gotten a tattoo myself, but eventually one of these days, I might have to get one. But you mentioned that you like your mom. How does your son deal with the fact that I mean his mom looks a little bit different from probably the other moms of the people that he might be socializing with?
Oh, well, so we actually have to deal with that a little bit more now than what we had before. My kids like to both I have both a daughter and a son, and they're 12 and 13, and they like to kind of mouth off, like, "My mom's stronger than your dad," or whatever. I'm just like, "Hold on. Let's not get me in fights here."
Yeah.
But there's also the whole like the kid on kid thing, and a lot of the little girls absolutely love it. I mean, I've got little girls that'll just stare at me in the stores or at restaurants and stuff, and I will wave at them or talk to them or smile, and they love it. But so my daughter's friends, they really actually kind of like it. They kind of think it's cool. But the boys, on the other hand, are like, "Your mom looks like a dude." And I'm like, I mean, not really, but okay, thanks. And so we just kind of have to work through that a little bit. But he just kind of shouts back at him and just like, yeah, whatever. She's strong, so it doesn't matter. And he kind of likes it.
Just
So
wait until the boy hits puberty, and then his friends will be like, "Dude, your mom's jacked." That's like just what the thing is. Dude would be like, "Dude, can she plan a program for me or something like that?" Yeah, yeah,
you're right.
that's
Yeah.
normally what happens then around that time. Yeah, at first it's like they're still kind of in the girls sort of have kind of cootie-ish maybe kind of phase, but now once they get to the thing, they'll be like, "Dude, she's hit me up with a plan immediately." So that it'll get easier then as he gets older. But yeah, that's great. And what was your friends and family's reaction like when you announced them? Like, "Hey, I really want to give this lifestyle a shot."
Oh man. Um, well, my mom wasn't super thrilled with it because she was like, "Well, you're going to look like a guy." I mean, that just seems like to be like the same
That seems
thing.
to be, like, the one thing that you hear, like, that seems to be, like, just everyone, and you're just like, "No,
Yeah.
come on." Yeah, yeah.
Like I don't sound like it. I don't look like it. I don't know. But yeah, it was just kind of mixed. I mean, they were just kind of like, oh, okay. They don't think they really understood like I was actually going to go for it. And they thought like, oh, she's just going to say that, and then it's not going to happen. But when I started, they were like, oh, okay, well, then they started kind of being okay with it and kind of seen as a, will you help me move?
I was just about to say that, you got a free mover for life then basically or anything, like, this pickle jar went up, yeah. That's the only problem though is that, like, it gets to a point, like, for me when I was much bigger, it got annoying to a fact where it was, like, almost every other weekend, especially during the summer.
Yeah, yeah.
I had the ultimatum though, I said, "Hey, as long as you buy me dinner afterwards, that's the price that you're gonna have to pay for me," but,
I just stay busy.
Oh, and that, oh yeah. Or hey, at least you got the excuse though, because like if you're prepping for a comp or something, like you'd be like, "Hey, I'm prepping, I can't do it." Whereas for me, I'll just be like, don't expect me to go, all happy go lucky, hop skipping over there. But hey, I'll come over eventually. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's just so fascinating. Especially the parents' reaction to it, and just yeah, how it changes over time. And that's generally a thing. Yeah, that really does happen. But when you get into just the strong woman side of it, the one thing that I found so different about the strong woman is supposed some of the bodybuilders I've found is that like you're right. I had Corey Butler on the podcast. I don't know if you know who that is. She just
Oh,
competed
I
at like
do
a
know her. Yeah.
yeah. She's like 6.5 feet tall. And I was like, good God. But
Yeah,
like
she's big.
power strong, like they have some of like the softest voices that you've ever heard and stuff like that. And it's a weird thing because I've talked to some bodybuilders who they don't, and it's just that's the one thing about strong women is that like yeah they're stronger than bodybuilders, but yet they don't. That's always been one fascinating thing about it was like okay yeah that's really awesome and yeah I mean, yeah, it's so funny where like people would just assume by taking one look at you that you'd just like, oh hey guys, and then you just talk, and then you're like, and then they're like, oh that's all. I mean, which is again, I love that you're doing that too, and I love that you're doing sort of the leaner, strong woman version of what most people are so accustomed to seeing because it does show that like yeah you can look like you could compete any day in a bodybuilding show and you can still do that. But going into strong woman, I mean the lifts are a little bit different than powerlifting. Was there any struggle for you sort of making that transition from the powerlifting lifts to the strong woman lifts?
Oh gosh, I mean, yeah, I mean, you're talking like I went from um, doing bodybuilding that I wasn't really taught actually super proper form on even the squats and stuff. So from going from the bodybuilding to powerlifting, it was a hassle. And then, but you know what? I tell you what, doing squats and doing certain deadlifts. Now I did have to change my deadlifts from a sumo to a conventional because they don't do sumo and strongman. They only do conventional. So that took a little bit of learning, and it took me to studying back down my weights to getting back up to where I need to be. Well, I'm still not where I want to be, but to actually get the form proper. Other than that, the shoulders, and we were already doing shoulders and stuff in my prep with the powerlifting. So it just took a little bit of techniques, like learning the techniques, not getting overly frustrated with the weights being light because you got to start off light to be able to get that form proper. I mean, just anything. If you're trying to throw a log up or do an axle overhead or a keg, all those things, if you get the technique down, the proper lift, and you can throw up some heavy weight.
Well, now I just gotta ask. Now I'm gonna bleep myself already, but what the bleep do you do for shoulders then? Because please don't tell me that you're doing like just some of these movements just to get shoulders. Like it has to be something. So what is a shoulder, or what do you think really contributes the most to your shoulders? Because I'm immediately gonna start doing them as soon as I'm done talking to you.
Well, I do shoulders twice a week. I do I do like a chest and shoulder, and then I do shoulders again, but it's like, let's see, a heavier day and a lighter day, if that makes sense. Um, but I go heavy. I mean, I don't know what the secret is to it, but I do love shoulders, so I tend to work them a lot.
All right, all right. You can play tough with me. You don't really know what the secret is. Fine, I'll get it out of her eventually. Everyone, well, this interrogate. No, no. But and again, yeah, that's another probably genetic thing too. That I mean, it frustrates so many people when they learn that when they're like, oh, I can work out just like her, and I'm not gonna look just like her. And it's like, well, yeah, duh. You don't. And that's it's just like learning when you learn that Santa Claus isn't real. Spoiler alert for anyone out there listening. It's kind of like when you learn that you're just like, okay, my whole faith in humanity is kind of shook a little bit, and that's the same thing happened to me when I learned about genetics and everything. But I mean, just doing these competitions too. I mean, you're using some body parts that most people would never assume that you'd use. Like, especially when I was talking to Corey Butler, when you're doing that big, where it's the big ball, and you basically have to like
Oh,
bear
Atlas
hug it to
dome.
lift it up. It's like you're
Mhm.
using body parts you would never use for anything other than doing that. So it's fascinating, sort of discovering things about just the human body and anatomy. And what was probably the most fascinating thing that you really discovered about yourself when you got to using these probably newer muscle groups that you never used before for other things?
Well, to be honest with you, actually, I don't think that these muscle groups are too odd. Actually, for being in firefighting,
Oh, yep.
when you go and fight a fire, there's muscles that you can't train any other way. I don't even. We've talked about that a lot and immensely in my job. Is there's almost like you have to train like you have to have a fire all the time to be able to train for having a fire because you're wearing about 100 to 150 pounds of gear on you, plus you're wrestling around with tools or with a hose, and you're getting that pressure against you, and that's not something you're typically used to using. But when it comes to like these lifts that I'm doing, as far as them being weird, no, actually, the whole ball thing is kind of hard for me because I got short arms. So I'm having to kind of get over or figure out a new way of doing that. But yeah, I don't really see it as anything more but functional. Like it is more functional usage um, than I have noticed that. But like I said, I don't think it's unusual. I think it's just unusual for people who don't have labor driven jobs.
I've worked in warehouses loading boxes, so I can tell you exactly, and that's where my back came from most likely. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about when they put you in that truck and they go, oh, you got a couple hundred, 60-pound packages. You got an hour or so to get them out of there, and you're just like, oh, either your back's gonna get really developed or you're gonna quit. Unfortunately for me, I should say I chose the get my back developed as opposed to doing the same thing. But and okay, so I was laughing a little bit when you answered that question because the moment that I saw you, I was like, okay, Traposaurus Rex was a nickname that I just came in myself. And then when you mentioned that you have small arms, I was like, okay, really? You're gonna really tell me that that's yeah. So it's like really you're more of a T-Rex, but yeah,
I
that's
am
you
actually.
know
It's I have a nickname, Bree Rex.
okay. They it fits in. At least I wasn't the only one that thought of it. Then at least someone else has thought of it, as well. But yeah, like being a firefighter, obviously this living this lifestyle has helped out with firefighting, but I mean, do you find that it's hard for you to also be a firefighter and even train? Because I know that we mentioned before, like bodybuilding is going to be almost impossible for you. But there are some days where even after some of my labor intensive jobs, where it's like I am not going to the gym today, I'm too tired. How do you deal with that? Being that you have an intensive job and then you also have to have an intensive lifestyle on top of your job.
I will tell you that is where I been most frustrated at is been seeing how other girls are competing and how well they're progressing.
The girls who are just like, I'm a secretary when I don't do this or something like that, and you're like,
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. How come like they're able to hit their lifts and consistently, and I'm like doing this, and it's just a roller coaster. I've got my good days. I could go and sleep for an hour or two after shift, or being in shift and only getting 2 hours of sleep in 24 hours, and then going to the gym and hitting a max lift, and where you're like dead to the world, you're tired as all get out, but then you go in there and you're like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna do this, and I'll hit like a max on my legs or something. It's crazy. I don't know. I've done that before, but I will tell you, it's been super frustrating because just like this week, I've had a kind of a rough go with work and everything, and just been busy, and because I don't work in an office or, just I'm doing stuff outside of work. I actually have, stuff going on labor wise outside of work as well, that, my overhead may suck this week. And it's like, I don't understand. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, but it is really frustrating because you look at some of these other people and you're like, well, how come they're great at getting it and I'm not, and I'm still doing like basically the same programming. But and I actually had that conversation with a coach because I told him, I was like, man, this is what I do. I work as a firefighter, and then like I was mowing at the time, or a second job or a third job that were all actual physical jobs. And I was like, hey, I can't hit what you want me to hit this week because I'm tired. And it's really frustrating because you should be, up here, and you're still kind of down here just trying to get there.
are you just like snorting pure adrenaline then when you're going 24 hours without sleep and then going to the gym? Because for me, I tried that twice in college, and both times, like I lasted about half an hour, and I'm like, okay, screw this, I'm not doing this anymore. So, what are you like just going to some primal part of your brain to do that? Because I cannot imagine. First of all, completing a workout. Second of all, maxing out or setting a new max after not sleeping for 24 hours and doing a 24-hour shift.
Well, I mean, I guess it's not really adrenaline, but it's more or less like caffeine. I love my monsters and I love my coffee, and I will not give either one of those up. And that's probably not a good thing, but it is what it is. I do BCAs, but I don't know. It's something weird. I mean, basically, you just have to tell yourself it's a mind game. Lifting heavy is huge in the mind. If you are not going in there with confidence, you are not going to get it. And even if you are going in there with confidence and you don't get that lift, still keep the confidence because it's just one of those days. And then we all have those days that we don't get where we wanting to get to. So, but with those days, man, it's a mental game. It's you sit there and you're like, I need to hit this lift today because I don't have time for it the rest of the week, and you just go in there and do it. I mean, there's really no secret to it other than strong-minded. Being
Have
strong-minded.
you ever tried the devil's cocktail, which is when you take a monster, you pour it in a cup, you take a 5-hour energy, you pour it into the monster, then you take some pixie sticks, like one or two will do, you pour that into the thing. That's how I got through college. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm probably gonna have a heart attack, any day now, just from doing that. I tried that once at work, and my friend who's a doctor messaged me. She's like, Ryan, you're gonna die. Like, you don't drink it. And I already drank it. I was like, no, I'm gonna be fine because it was like a 12-hour shift that I was doing overnight. About hour and a half later, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, well, I'm gonna go die now. So let's just say I went on the toilet. I think I lost probably about easily 5 to 10 pounds probably over the next half hour on the toilet. I'm not going to go into graphic detail, but let's just say after that I learned my lesson and I have not done that since. But hey, if you're really needing it and there's no last resort, and if you ever need to cut some weight, I always tell people, hey, do that. You might have a heart attack, but then again, you got to risk it to hit the biscuit. Then I guess every once in a while. So if you really want those short term gains, but yeah, I'm never ever doing that again, and I could never. But yeah, that is insane. That is, yeah. But so everyone learn from my mistake. Do not do what I did. But I mean, I love to talk about sleep as well, even for the bodybuilders that have on, but especially for the strong woman and for you too when it comes to your lifestyle. What is your relationship with sleep like? Because especially when you're doing like 24-hour shifts, and I mean, your sleep has got to be crazier than mine. And I thought I'm the craziest sleeper on this podcast.
Well, I mean, if it's busy, like we have busy season, we have an off season. We've had a couple of shifts where we actually got to sleep about 5 hours, and so it's actually been kind of nice. But
Okay, she called
I
5 hours sleep nice, everyone. Okay, that's just to show you how where she's at right now mentally.
yeah, no, 5 to 6 hours is actually my prime. If I
What?
do about 7 to 8, it is terrible. I'm overtired, groggy the next day, just cannot function like I normally can. My brain is foggy. It's terrible. But if I get anywhere from 2 hours to 5 or 6, I'm not doing too bad. And I can actually, like, 5 or 6 is perfect. 2 to 4, it's kind of rough, but I can make it through the next day and just, I mean, you're talking about 2 hours in a 48-hour period, not just 24-hour period. But yeah, I mean,
As you can tell by me and just how I'm wound tight, if I don't get my beauty sleep, things are. I'm like the Tasmanian devil, where it's like, you need to get your sleep in order to function like I do at times. But yeah, that is insane. 2 hours in a 48 hour. I mean, I've done that a couple of times, but I wasn't doing anything like strenuous at all. Like I just couldn't sleep, or I was bored, or something like that. Where it's just, yeah, I could not imagine then like going to work and doing that. I mean, I did that once at my job and I left, 2 hours early. I told my boss, like, I haven't gotten any sleep. I'm going to have to leave early. And they're like, yeah, that's fine. But that was, yeah, again, more power to you and more praise to you, because I could never, ever do that in my life. But I talked to, the bodybuilders on here a lot about cardio. Please tell me that you do not have a relationship with cardio.
yes and no. I don't do cardio on a regular basis. I do like to do cardio here and there. If I want to get a little bit leaner, then I'll throw in some cardio. Or if I realize that I'm like huffing and puffing going up a flight of stairs, and I'm like, oh, I might actually want to hit some cardio a little bit because with my job and everything, that is kind of a thing. If you're lagging behind everybody else and you're this 5'4" 160-pound girl that's like, why is she slacking? And we're like 300 pounds, kind of give you a look. And I'm like, yeah, that's not cool. I don't want to be the one slacking. So,
Oh, even still, if I'm ever in a fire emergency in Missouri, I'm just gonna be like, get Brianne. She's gonna be at the one that the fireman carries me out of there, because I don't trust any of these other any of these other dudes here. But no, that's. Do you find that, like, as you probably are one of the at least more muscular ones on the crew, at least, or I know that it's, there are a lot of, jack dudes that are firefighters as well, but like, do you find that, like, you sort of get like more of like the, oh, ask her to do it, she can do it, ask her to do that type of stuff, yeah.
oh yeah, a lot of people follow me on Facebook or on Instagram, and so they'll be like, I know you could lift a truck, but I get a lot of those comments, or they'll have me do it, or my crew, actually, it's me and my captain both work out at work. We have some implements there, so I have like farmer's carry, a log, and things like that that I'll bring into work because we lift while we're on shift, and we're both pretty decently muscular people and strong, and so as far as like on our department, we're the only ones that I know that are really that.
Okay, again, this is her body dysmorphia talking when she said decently muscular. That's one thing that I love with some of these compares where they're just like, yeah, I'm just all right. And I was like, compared to 99.99 repeating about 20 more times percent of the population, yeah, you are much, but yeah, and again, but yeah, and that's great. And I mean, I'm gonna ask some firefighting questions now before I get to my final questions, because I mean, this was recorded 2 days before Thanksgiving, but this will be released, prior to Christmas too, and that's important. As we get closer to the holidays, I mean, some people like to light candles a lot. Some people like to do a lot of, other things for holidays that might be a little bit more conductive to having fire spread. But what are some of the, recommended things, especially as, we're in the holiday season, of what people can do to help prevent fires?
Well, water your Christmas tree. If you're gonna have a live Christmas tree in your house, water it. Be careful, watch it, be wary of it. You know, with lights, I would shut them off. That's actually one of the things that I've seen most of is that live Christmas trees are not, they're pretty, they're really pretty, but they end up being a fire hazard. Fake trees actually end up being a little bit more safer, to be honest. Candles, you know, you just need to watch what's around them and what container they're in. If they're in a container, you know, those are also things I you see a lot of is that they'll melt or they'll melt down, they'll fall off, or there's the Christmas decoration over around them, and it'll catch that on fire, and that's definitely something we see a lot of. And also, honestly, it's more or less you're building a fire in your fireplace and having not had it checked, and so then we end up with an issue in the fireplace that we have to deal with, and that's not good. So that's kind of, I mean, that's the gist of it. It's really not a whole lot there other than just that.
Well, yeah, well, and for me, my mom always instilled in us to whenever you light a match, you put it under water afterwards because when she was a kid, actually, for it was Christmas Eve, and my grandpa was like a huge cigar guy, so he was having a couple after work. He forgot to, he blew out the match, he thought, and then he put it in a trash can and he just threw it into a trash can out in the garage. About half an hour later, most of their Christmas presents were burnt and stuff like that. So still to this day, it's been ingrained in me as a little kid. Whenever I light a match or anything like that, you run it underwater, and that's another little tip for you, out there. And I love asking, like, what was probably the biggest fire that you ever dealt with your career so far?
Uh, oh gosh, it would be a condo, one of those tall condos, about 6-story condo that was caught on fire and went through the roof. That was probably one of the biggest ones. There's actually been a couple of them, but that's one of the biggest buildings. Um, there was a mansion that caught on fire, and it was about a 3 to 4 story, but it was a mansion. It was huge, and that caught on fire, and that was an all nighter. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's no joke, and I mean, I'm glad that you're able to like do this full time and stuff. Because like I told her, like I'm from an area where you volunteer, and I think it's kind of like in my area, like what most police officers might do for like their extra credit or anything like that they might have to do is that like, hey, we just do like 5 hours of firing a year. And I mean, my dad was from a town of 200 people where literally his dad, who owned the grocery store, was a volunteer firefighter that you only had to do whatever. But yeah, it was, I mean, that is so great. And a couple of the questions that I like to ask, just for the strong woman that I have on, the thing about these competitions is that most of the time, I mean, they use, there's so many different lifts to do. How do you prepare yourself for, some of these competitions, they don't even really share with you, what these lifts are going to be until it's very soon to the competition. So how do you just train yourself year round on all these different types? Because I would be that one guy that if there's like 12 lifts that I need to learn, the one that I wouldn't focus on would be like the main one of that event, because I just have that type of luck in my life. So how do you train? How do you like make sure that you're good to go on everything, even though you're only going to be needing to use maybe like, let's say 25% of the lifts that you actually train?
well, gosh, like I said, I'm still new to this, so Corey would have been a little bit better at kind of justifying and figuring that one out better than me
Oh,
because
I asked
he's
her the same question. It was sort of the similar thing too. She was just like, "Oh yeah, you just gotta train a lot," and I was like, "Yeah, okay." I mean, it's like, yeah, that's the correct way to put it. So yeah, I mean,
I mean, basically, I will work on a lift or two or three in a week or two and kind of get more comfortable with those and then switch it up. If I'm not doing a comp, I'm trying to still well rounded. I will. That's how I'll do it, and I'll do. If I'm not like this comp that I have coming up is just a small one, but that's like incline press for with a log. Well, that's like I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's a very hard one. The weight isn't very heavy either, so I'm just kinda like,
well,
"Oh,
and
okay."
like if you don't have the equipment, it's hard too because like how can you simulate like lifting a log if you're using a barbell basically and stuff like so people do not understand that they're like, oh yeah, like you can easily lift more with like a barbell than other things. So that's why when sometimes people see some of these, strong people competing, they're like, oh, they're not even lifting that much. It's like try grabbing a log or a boulder or anything like that. It's not the same as doing a deadlift with a barbell.
No, you have to get creative. I mean, I will say that that is one thing that I've had to learn. Before I started going to gyms that had all the implements or buying my own implements, I actually had to get creative. There was like I didn't have a place to do deadlift for a car, so I just used the hex bar to kind of simulate lifting a car, deadlifting a car, and it worked out. It actually justified almost very well.
I mean, you
But
could just be the one person that scares the hell out of their neighbors by deadlifting their car in their driveway, basically. Then just for everyone to see and just be like, yeah, we're not messing with her. She's yeah, every kids, don't even go to her house to trick or treat or anything like that. We don't know what's going on over there. But no, that's. And I saw your video of like when you're doing the truck pull and stuff like that, and just watching that, I'm like, okay, I need to go and work out myself as well. But if there was one thing that you can change just about the health and fitness lifestyle in general that you've had, what would be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
as far as like my lifestyle or
Or
as
or
just
in general, we can do both. Yeah.
uh I guess for my lifestyle, I mean, if I could change something, it would be that it'd be a little bit easier for me to prep and to actually, like we were talking about earlier. It is hard whenever you're a labor job versus whenever you're an office job. And that's something that a lot of people don't see. They just go, "Well, how come you're not as good as this person?" And it's like, well, you know what? I will be will be to that level at some point in
Yeah.
time. But it is going to take me a little bit longer because unfortunately I can't quit my job. I'm not going to quit my job. I have two passions, and that's one of my passions. And if I could change it, that's basically what I would change. Because other than that, I mean, I don't think I'm doing too bad. But with as far as general, there's been some people I just wish would be more humble. Honestly, we're just doing this because we all are passionate about it. Stay humble. Don't be a dick to people. If somebody comes up and asks me something, some people will scoff at that. They're just like, you know. But you know what? That person's asking me because they want to know so that they can get somewhere. Maybe they get there, or maybe they don't, or maybe they just decide, oh no, I'm not going to do that anyways. But I've had a lot of females come up and ask them certain questions and stuff, and some girls will just kind of like get all haughty with them, and I'm no, no. If I want to help them because I didn't get that kind of support when I was starting out on all this, and you know the heck if they're interested and if they're like passionate about it, if I can help them succeed, then go for it. Like I just wish that would be the case for more people. It just seems like we kind of get in our heads and we don't stay humble you know
Which again, it's a blessing in disguise that I never competed in, bodybuilding, powerlifting, or strongwoman because I would be that guy who's basically nude 24/7, just posing in front of everyone and just doing. So I was like, okay, that's a good thing, Ryan. That's a good thing that you aren't doing that. So it's for the safety of the public and for the betterment of the human race that I'm not doing that. But no, I wouldn't honestly be like that. But I would be one of those. I would be one of those where I, well, like even with but for you too, is it hard to like not walk in a mirror and just not like look every once in a while? Because like for even when I was in shape, like that was hard for me to not do.
I would say, I mean, if it's a good day, if I'm feeling pretty good about myself, I will.
Yeah. Which I mean,
I'll
like,
look in
yeah,
the mirror.
everyone does. I mean, even the people that are out of shape do it all the time. I mean, it's just in that yeah, again, yeah, it is just human nature. And now we go to the number one question that you've probably heard more than any other question since you started working out. What are your best lifts?
Oh man, my favorite one is like, what do you bench?
Oh my god! So that's one of the reasons why I don't have as many guys on the podcast because that's literally the entire conversation I'm going to have. Is like, "Sup, bro? How much you lift?" And then that's the whole conversation, really. Yeah.
Oh man. Um, well, my best lifts, I'd say my best lifts are my lower lifts, my lower body lifts. So like my deadlift and my squat right now are probably about my best lifts. My overhead, I'm not happy with where it's at, so maybe that's just me, but I would really like to see myself go over 200, not just hit 200.
Yeah. Well, with those traps, you got to be like shrugging like got to be shrugging like hundreds at least or something like that if you
Oh
wanted to.
god.
But geez, no. And again, that's the one thing that I do like about like the strong people as opposed to the bodybuilders that like it's not an illusion with the strong people. With some of the bodybuilders, yeah, and they're the first people to admit it. Yeah, a lot of it is an illusion where you just do things and they're not lifting the heaviest weights. So that's why I like talking to people that actually do lift the heavy weights. And when we do have you on a year from today, because I'd love to have you on again because you were such a great guest. Where would you like to be at just in your health and fitness journey, just in your overall life? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved?
Oh gosh, so actually today is I decided to kind of proceed a little bit more into it for next year, and hopefully I'll get there. We'll see. But I would like to hit 600 on my deadlift, and that's a big one that I'm actually like really wanting to shoot for is my deadlift to get up there. Um, Squat heavier. I'd like to have my overhead press at over 200. I'd like to hopefully maybe get my pro card in a strong woman world. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm going to be hitting a couple of powerlifting meets, one in the spring and maybe one in the summer. And that's kind of where I'm wanting to hopefully get my deadlift, my squat kind of solidified a little bit better so that I can get my numbers more my Wilks, however you say it. I don't
Hey,
I've never
hey,
done
you know more than me. Okay, so there's that.
it.
There's that at least. So.
But that's where I mean I know I can obtain it. I'm in the 500s right now with my deadlift, and so I know I can obtain the deadlift 600. I just got to get the proper programming, and right now I'm just doing my own thing. So I reached out to somebody to help program me, and I'm hoping that I can make some huge jumps with that.
That is awesome. We wish you nothing but the best. And again, I'll leave a link to her Instagram page down below. And if you can't find her, just look up Brick Shithouse in the dictionary. There'll probably be a photo of her that will pop out. So there's always that. But again, you will get inspired and motivated to get off that couch and stop eating all those Twinkies. And maybe go get a lift in. But again, Brianne, we cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your journey with us. It was an absolute delight to talk to you.
Well, thanks. It was fun.
Again, Brianne, thank you again, and everyone go check her out. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.